Good evening. Good Shabbos. Thank you for joining us this evening. We begin, as we do every Friday night, with Shalom Aleichem. It's a reminder that we welcome each other as if each one of us was an angel. Each one of us, close or not so close, is on par with angelic beings. Shalom Aleichem. If you're following along in the siddur, we're on page number 5. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech, malachei hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech, malachei hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, malachei ha-shalom, malachei elyon. Mi-melech, malachei hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We'll turn in a moment to the Yedi Nefesh on page number 10 in the siddur. And as we're turning, a couple of reminders. At the end of the service, we'll be making kiddush with wine and bread. So if you'd like to pour a glass of wine and have a piece of bread ready for the end of the service, you'll be able to join us, and we will be lighting candles together. I wish to make a point as we're about to turn to Yedi Nefesh. We're standing here because, frankly, I'm moved by these plaques on what I call the Teitzei Chaim. Eitz Chaim means tree of life. Teitzei is plural, 2 trees of life, and of course they meet in the middle. And many of our shul members remember that there are names of family members and loved ones and friends and relatives inscribed here on these plaques, reminding us that the true essence of being part of a shul community is not just the building, but it's the people that give the building meaning. And that's why for the past couple of weeks, and perhaps next week as well, just temporarily, on a few Friday nights in a row, we're here to underscore how important it is that all of you are to the life of this shul. You are the life of the shul. You and your family members and your loved ones spanning generations, and those who are right now amidst your family, and hopefully those in years to come. Side note of Jewish trivia, these are Teitzei Chaim, 2 are Teitzei, 2. And when we take the Torah out of the ark, each of those 2 handles is called an Eitz Chaim. Combined, they're called Teitzei Chaim, just like these 2 Teitzei Chaim. So every time we take a Torah out of the ark, we have the Teitzei Chaim, the trees of life. And for us in our community, it means the trees of family. When we take the Torah out of the ark, it's as if we're holding on to all of your loved ones. And that brings us to Yedi Nefesh, which needs to be taken in context of loving each other. It's multi-layered and multi-textured Hebrew poetry, but one aspect of this poem is that each one of us, having a soul, loves God. And I'm thinking this evening of family members and friends, those close at hand and those distant, those alive and those who have died, But every one of us has at the core a spark that will never abate. And from a Jewish perspective, that's called nefesh, a soul. And now, Yedid Nefesh, on page number 10, Craig Taubman.
Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman Av Harachaman Mishoch Avdecha El Ritzonecha El Ritzonecha Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman Av Harachaman Mishoch Avdecha El Ritzonecha El Ritzonecha Yarutz Avdecha Kemo Ayal Ishtachave El Mul Hadarecha Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman Av Harachaman Mishoch Avdecha El Ritzonecha El Ritzonecha
On page 11, Lechunaranana, which literally means, come on, let's sing together. Page 11. Lechunaranana ladonai nariya letzur yishenu nekadma fana bitoda bizmiro nariya lo ki el gadol adonai umelech gadol al kol Elohim asher beyado mekarei aretz v'toafot harim lo. The English, the third stanza on the facing page. Come then, let us bow and kneel, let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai, who formed us. It takes us back to the description of the creation of humanity, when God formed Adam and Chava, that first man and that first woman. God fashioned us we should see ourselves as being handmade by God, even as that metaphor is presented in the beginning of Breshit, one of the most compelling of all human constructions, the idea of a metaphor. Only this metaphor is touched by the fingers of God, as are each and every one of us. And that's how we begin our song this evening, reminding us that each one of us is handmade by God. On page 15, on the English side, page 15 and 16, the English of the psalm. Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, the many distant lands rejoice. Clouds and thick darkness surround the divine. Righteousness and justice secure God's throne. Fire goes before God, consuming besiegers round about. Flashes of lightning illumine the land. The earth watches and trembles. Mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the Master of all the earth. The heavens tell of God's righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory. Worshippers of idols be shamed for praising false gods. All that is deemed supreme bow before God. Sion hears of it and rejoices. The cities of Judah exult as you, Adonai, pass judgment. You, Adonai, are above all that is earthly, exalted over all that is worshipped as divine. Those who love Adonai hate evil. God protects the lives of the faithful, saving them from the hands of the sinful. Light is sown for the righteous, and joy for the upright. Rejoice in Adonai, you righteous people, and thank God as you pronounce the divine, holy name. Turning to page 21, singing together a song. Handmade by God, each one of us, all of us, righteous. That is the perspective of the Psalms of us. On page 21. Mizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai, kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai b'adrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim, el hakavod irim, Adonai al maim rabim, kol Adonai ba'koach, ay, kol Adonai behadar, kol Adonai shaver arazim, v'shaver Adonai et arzei alvanon, v'yarkidem kemo egel, Levanon v'siryon, Kemo venre'emim, ay, kol Adonai chotzev lavotesh, kol Adonai yachil midbar, yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, kol Adonai yachol alay alot, vayechesof yarot uvechalo, kulo omer kavod, ay, Adonai lama Bo Yashav Yeshev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Oz Lamoiten, Adonai Yavarech Etamo Vashalom, Yai Dai 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 Dai, Yada Dai 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 Dai, Yai Dai 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 Dai, Yai Dai Dai Dai, last time, and Yai Dai 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 Dai, Yai Dai 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 Dai, Yai Dai 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 Dai, Yai Dai Dai Dai, Yai Dai 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 Dai Dai, Yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai dai, yai dai dai dai. We can sing, even if we think that our voices are not terrific. Remember, God made each one of us, all 7.4 billion people on this planet. God knows our vocal cords. God knows our abilities better than anyone. we can sing. We're reflecting, in many senses of the word, who we are as we sing to God, as we sing to each other, as we sing along with each other. L'charudi, in the siddur, on page 23, the first three stanzas, page 23, the first three stanzas, and then the last stanza on page... Most of us by now know this melody brought by Craig Taubman.
לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני פני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת ולתהילה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייכם. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה.
Reading the Shabbat with the Bowie in just a moment. We rise to Bowie Kala.
בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לה 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 לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, פני פני שבת נקבלה. לה לה.
Turning now to page 27. You may be seated. Page 27, the Psalm for Shabbat itself. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Lahagid baboker chasdecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asor v'alei nabel, alei higayon bechinor, mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. Ki simachthani Adonai b'fa'alecha, b'ma'aseh yadecha aranen, ma'agalu ma'asecha Adonai, ma'od amku machshavotecha, mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. You gladdened me with your deeds, Adonai, and I shall sing of your handiwork. How wonderful are your works, Adonai, how subtle your designs. The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms, only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. This is the second time in the Friday evening service that you've seen that the prayer book itself calls us, deems us to be righteous. The prayer book is confident that you and I are righteous in this world. How so? For one, we've chosen to gather together in spite of challenges. We're focusing on being a community, and we're holding on to Jewishness and Jewish thought and Jewish behavior and Jewish content and Jewish tradition and Jewish values. And when we all do that together, we bring righteousness into the world. Tzadik katamar yifrach. Tzadik katamar yifrach, kerez balvanon yiskeh shetulim beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu. Or Yenovon Beseva Tisheni Verananim Yiyul Hagid Ki Ashar Adonai Tsuri V'lo Avlata Bo. Please rise the Borchu on page 39b. Baruch Hu et Adonai Amavorach. Baruch Adonai Amavorach Le'olam Voed. We are seated. The first bracha of the evening service on the English side. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space. You completed your work of creation on the seventh day, calling this day from one evening to the next the Holy Shabbat, and gave this day of rest in all its holiness to your people Israel. Creator of day and night, rolling light before darkness and darkness from light, making day pass and bringing on the evening, distinguishing day from night. Adonai Tzvaot is your name.
living and ever-present God, may your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. El chai b'kayom, tamidim l'chalein olam bo'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. On page 40. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Havtam Torah u'mitzvot chukim u'mishpatim otanu limadita Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shachveinu v'kumeinu nasiach b'chukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'b'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed Ki em chayenu v'yorech yameinu v'orech yameinu u'v'hem negei yomam v'layla V'avotecha al tasim imenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. In preparation for the Shema, a bit of focus. The Shema on page 41. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavcha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol miodecha, V'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'alektecha v'aderech v'shachbecha v'kumecha v'kishartam liot al yadecha V'hayu letotafot bein einecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'sharecha. Adonai Elohechem emet. On page 44, the Mi Chamocha, and as I mentioned previously, but it needs to be reiterated, this is our new siddur, and we're encouraging people to purchase a siddur and bring it into their homes so they can, more than just hum along, they can feel a part of the Shul community, and furthermore, how can a Jewish home not have a prayer book? And I know that many of us have prayer books from our parents and our grandparents, which we treasure. But if we're not using those, we should be using a siddur when we're participating in services. So I encourage you, again, to buy a siddur and contact me if you have any questions. And one tiny word comes into the Friday evening service, but continues to make a lasting impression upon me. Her name is Miriam, in Hebrew Miriam. In the traditional phrase just before the Mi Chamocha, it says, and Moses led the people of Israel and called out to the people of Israel. But in the
adjusted version, you might say, or the contemporary version here, in this new conservative siddur, it says Moses and Miriam led the people of Israel. And that opens an entirely new understanding of leadership within Jewish life by incorporating half of our population that up until only recently had not been participating. And just think how you and I have been enriched by all the talent, all the strength, all the capacity for moving forward in our community by having men and women participating equally in Jewish life. U'malchuto b'ratzon kiblu lahem Moshe u'Miriam u'vnei Yisrael l'cha'anu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha bo'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh Noratilot osefele Malchutecha ra'u vanecha bokeh hayam lifnei Moshe zeli anu v'yamru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar kifad Adonai et Yaakov Ugalom yad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Lashkivenu on page 45, a prayer calling out to all of us, from all of us, and beyond all of us, within our own community, to everyone, to be able to sleep in a sense of security this evening. And watching the news, we see how many people in our land aren't sleeping with a sense of rest and calm. And we send our hearts, we send our love for humanity to people all over the country, the world, and especially to those ravaged by the storm Hurricane Laura. The English side on page 45. Hashkivenu Adonai, our God, to sleep peacefully. Awaken us to life, O Sovereign. Spread over all of us your canopy of peace. Restore us all with your good counsel, and save us all for the sake of your name. Shield us all. Remove from us all enemies, pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow. Remove the evil forces that surround us all. Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. For you, God, watch over and deliver us all. And you, God, are sovereign, merciful, and compassionate. Ensure our going and coming for life and peace now and forever. May you spread over us all your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai, who spreads the canopy of peace over us all, over all the people of Israel, and over Jerusalem. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. The top of page 46, Vishamru. Craig Taubman.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam. B'nei Yisrael לדורותם בריתולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם
Do you know what Vishamru means? Vishamru means, and y'all shall observe, guard, protect Shabbat. Does Shabbat need guarding and protecting? Shabbat needs to be observed. If we don't observe Shabbat, if we kind of forget what Shabbos is all about, Shabbos will go away. Vishamru means it's up to all of us, not just one, not just the rabbi or somebody involved in the ritual committee or somebody bringing this live stream out into the world. It's up to all of us, Vishamru, all of y'all. And one of the ways that you and I can do that is in a moment rising for a prayer and offering a prayer in silence. The traditional siddur, it's page 47 to 52, where you can compose your own prayer. But let your mind and your heart take hold of you as you fashion this prayer or view the traditional text. A prayer that you would say on Shabbat and you wouldn't say during the week. Let that be your prayer this evening. First Chatzi Kaddish and then a few moments of silence. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbo, Amen. Be'olma divrach yirtei v'mechutei b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael Bagala, bagala, ubizman kariv, v'imero, amen. Yehi shemei Rabba mevarach, Olam liol meil maya, yitbarach, yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitale, v'yithalal, shemei dekudesha, Brichu li'elam korachata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran b'olma v'imero. Amen. You're invited to rise, if so able, at this time. A few moments of silent prayer or the traditional text, pages 47 through 52. A prayer for Shabbat.
The Kaddish Shalem is on page 54. If you're still reciting your prayer, please continue. The full Kaddish on page number 54. Yitkaral v'yitkarash shemei Rabbo, Amen. Be'olma divrach yiritim l'chokdei b'chayfim ro, Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbo mevorach, Olam li'olmei olmaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipasei v'yirav shemei kudusha, B'rechu, Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, Tishbachata v'nechamata, Tarim avim ro, Amen. Titkabel tzavzim ro, Amen. Yeshua ro, Amen. V'sishbamav Yeshua shalom v'ksim ro, Amen. Bumper stickers are very appealing. Many of them are humorous or sarcastic, biting, pointed. Perhaps the main reason that they're so appealing is that they're succinct. In last week's Torah reading, we had one of the most important bumper stickers of all in terms of Torah and Judaism. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. And many Jewish people would say that nearly summarizes all of Judaism, putting Judaism into a nutshell. Justice, bringing justice, chasing after justice, ensuring justice. And yes, there is a little bit of, you might detail in last week's Torah reading, but I think the true elaboration happens in this week's Torah reading, which is called Teitzei. And there are 57 mitzvahs in this week's Torah reading, which is one of the largest collections of mitzvot, commandments, 57 mitzvot. And I would argue that a significant plurality of those, or perhaps the majority, are driving us to build justice, to bring justice, to establish justice in many different aspects of our lives, because it's not enough to just put a bumper sticker on your ancient chariot or your modern vehicle and say, this is what I believe. We have to live out the message. So, for example, a number of mitzvot at the very beginning of this Torah reading speak of prevention of animal cruelty. I'm not a farmer. I'm not sure how many of you are experienced with yoking animals to plows, but we are forbidden to yoke an ox and a donkey to the same harness or the same plow. It doesn't say why in the Torah, but it's obvious. The ox is much more powerful, and it will be pulling along and bringing suffering to the donkey. So that's forbidden. In a modern context, it means respect animals where and how they are when they're under your control, your possession. Furthermore, if you see an animal, again, it's a donkey, and it's struggling under a load, you and I are supposed to go forward and adjust the load of the animal and assist the animal. And if it's a neighbor's animal, or even an animal belonging to someone whom we don't know, we're still supposed to care for it and protect it. And furthermore, if an animal is lost, the Torah goes into detail, return the animal to someone whether you know the person or not. By extension, even if you don't like somebody, you have to return lost property to the person. And how often does property go lost or missing? And how often does property belonging to someone whom you and I don't know or don't like go missing? But we're commanded to restore property. And finally, back in the day, before you and I bought eggs in a grocery store, perhaps in a styrofoam container, if you're walking along and you see a mama bird sitting on a nest and you want the eggs, you've got to shoo away the mama bird. Again, not a reason given, but you and I can understand that we're trying to protect the feelings of the mama bird. Yes, you need the eggs, but don't subject the animal to the loss of her seeing her eggs, her future young being taken. We have a number of these mitzvot that are driving us in very fundamental, daily, ordinary protocols of animals to bring justice into our world. And then there's another mitzvah which calls out, and it may surprise you. And it says that when a person has been convicted of a capital crime and he's been condemned to death and executed, you must honor him with the appropriate burial. He must have a dignified burial. He's been executed. So don't hold any grudge against the person now. Every person deserves a dignified burial. And just think about what that would engender within you and me and our society. It might run counter to the hurt in our heart over somebody who's done a heinous crime. But the crime has been paid for by the execution. If we take all those mitzvot and we add them up together, prevention of cruelty to animals, paying attention to somebody who has already paid the ultimate price and justice has been meted out, and respecting that he or she was a human being, it's going to add something to our experience. There's a mitzvah that's clanging loudly in my ears this evening, and with this we'll conclude. Do not detest somebody because of who his parents, his ancestors were or are. Do not detest somebody today because of who his parents or ancestors were. Thinking about many episodes in our modern American society wherein we see a great deal of conflict and hostility and violence, could we track those elements of violence and hostility and conflict to people despising someone's ancestors? Add up what we have in our tradition about the seeds of planting justice in daily life and how they might take root and flourish. And we as Jews, the children who own Torah, who possess Torah, who are obligated to share Torah, have much to say in our world today. May we all bring justice into the world. And now we rise for Kiddush. Again, wine or juice. The Kiddush is found in the siddur on page number 55. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzav banu v'shabbat kodsho b'yavav v'ratzon inchilanu zikaro l'maseh b'reshit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim. Kidashta mikol amim v'shabbat kodshecha b'yavav v'ratzon hinchaltanu baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabbat. Perhaps you have a bit of bread for the hamotzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem etz. The Aleinu on page 56. Please rise for the Aleinu on page 56. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol Latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu kagoye haratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol amonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim Lifnei Melech Malchei Amlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu She'unoteh Shamayim V'yosei Haaretz U'moshav Yikaro B'Shamayim Imal U'shchinatu zo B'gavei Meromim Hu Eloheinu Ein Od Emet Malkeinu Ebezulato Kakatu B'Torato Yadata Yom Vashevota El Levavecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim B'Shamayim Imal V'al Haaretz Mitachat Ein Od Ein Od. V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom ha'hu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. In a moment we'll be reciting the Mourner's Kaddish. And if you wish to remain standing and perhaps offer the Kaddish, you're invited to do so. Those who are not inclined are invited to have a seat at this time. On this Shabbat, we in our shul remember with great love Philip Reddish, Larry Michelle, Abe Levine, William Kahn, Eddie Grodsky, Willie Berman, Lena W. Fisher, Mary Kellner Bronstein, Irene Berger, Beth Lubell Neal, Esther Blitz Siegel, Bessie Brown, David Plotka, Sarah Grodsky, Arthur Grodsky, Libby Ladizhensky, Bess Malkin, remembering also Lillian Rudnick and Jim Quinn. If you know of someone who you'd like to mention the name, please do so at this time in your own home. And we're thinking of, unfortunately, the loss of life due to the hurricane. Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'Yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah. Amen. Be'olma Divra Chirute v'Yamlich Malchute. B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'meru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mivarach la'alam olalmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal Shmei dekudesha b'rechu. La'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran ba'alma v'meru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Just now, we attached the names of your loved ones to the name of God. In the community context of saying Kaddish, we hope that offers you comfort, that the names of your loved ones are not words on a page, but much more. And our hearts and prayers go out to all who are grieving and mourning, and our deepest prayers to everyone across the face of this planet for peace. We'll conclude in just a minute after a couple of brief announcements reminding us, of course, that tomorrow's services are 10 to 11, 11:15. It depends on when we end, 10 to 11, 10 to 11:15. Tomorrow evening, Zoom Havdalah across the entire state of Alabama, 8 o'clock. It's been in the emails, and we hope that you join us. It's really kind of fun. So bring a glass of wine to your computer screen or your tablet or your cell phone tomorrow evening for Zoom Havdalah. We have 3 people playing guitar and a cantor singing tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, for Zoom Havdalah. That's tomorrow night. Sunday morning from 10:30 to 11:30, if you are so inclined, bring a chair and your mask to the front portico of the shul. Physical distancing, we gather, and some people bring donuts, schmooze, just to see people face to face. That's Sunday morning. Remembering Monday, August 31st, Tanakh study on Zoom from 12 to 1. Story time for the young children, 5:30 to 6. Tuesday, the Spirit series continues. Tuesday, Zoom Spirit series. It's 5 o'clock. The topic is, can a psalm help me at this time of year? That's the Tuesday Spirit series, 5 to 5:30 on Zoom. Don't forget, Thursday, September 3rd, our shul is sponsoring or co-sponsoring, along with ISJL and other congregations, a special concert. Joe Buchanan, the adjustments have been made to the settings. Music is going to be terrific. Thursday, September 3rd at 7 o'clock, a concert. Enjoy some Texan, Jewish boy, twang, mostly English, a little bit of Hebrew, Jewish music. It's fun. Joe Buchanan, he's fun. And I think that's about it. Oh, 2 announcements. Number 1, people, you need to bring in a photograph that we can place on the seats for the high holidays. I mentioned this in my recent bulletin explaining how we're doing services online. We need a picture of every member of the shul here in the building. And don't forget that we're asking for our food bank collections, as we normally do every year for Yom Kippur, starting now. And if you want a high holiday prayer book, you want to check one out, just call Robin and we'll make arrangements for you to come by and pick it up. And now we'll conclude. The song is on page 189. You might catch on. I think it's a very catchy melody. And if you don't know the words, it's Yismechu v'malchutcha. And if you want to turn to page 189 and you have the siddur, otherwise you just hum along. It's a fun song. Rabbi Joe Black. Let's be happy about Shabbat.
ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקורא עונג ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת עם מקדשי שביעי כולם ישבעו ויתענגו מטובך ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקורא עונג ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו אלדד ימי אותו קראת זכר למעשה בראשית
Join me as we light candles in honor of Shabbat. Baruch Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshana b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'avnei shel Shabbat. You are blessed, God our God, ruler of the universe, for commanding us to bring the holiness of the Shabbat flames into our lives. May you all have a Shabbat Shalom, a Shabbos of peace. Looking forward to seeing you perhaps tomorrow morning, 10 to 11:15. And don't forget, Havdalah tomorrow night. Until then, may you all be blessed. Shalom.